was really an impulse. We were both children of the energy crisis in the mid-70s, and we had been interested since then with solar energy, but it kind of, we had forgotten about it for years. And then about 2 years ago, we were at a home show and we stumbled across SAIL, and we learned the advances in solar energy since then, and we were convinced that it was the way to go. Yeah, it was at the Energy Expo. Wasn't at the Nassau Coliseum. I think it was at Nassau County Community, at Suffolk County Community College, and we were in the market for a new roof, actually, not even thinking about solar. And then that's where we met SAIL. He was just there and said, "Hey, this looks interesting. Let's go talk to this fellow." There were other solar contractors there at the expo. They hadn't been around as long as SAIL, so their expertise was more limited. And so SAIL had a longer track history, and I was enticed by his background. I mean, there was one guy who was there. I asked him, "What did you do prior to doing this? You know, doing solar installs?" He goes, "I was a plumber." Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But to go from plumbing to solar energy, I thought was a pretty big jump. So I wasn't too impressed, and SAIL again impressed me with his background. SAIL's engineering background was what led me to him. I'm an engineer as well, so I knew where he was coming from, and he explained how he got into the business after 9/11. And it just made sense to me that he would go down this path. And the fact that he was local, he was here in the Northport area, made also a big difference. And he was able to show me his prior installations and the equipment that he was using. The SunPower panels are visually striking, and we just liked the way those looked because we were limited to having the panels on the front of our house. So curb appeal was very important. And I was able to convince my spouse, Allison, that, not really convinced, but she saw it and said, "Oh, this doesn't look too bad," as opposed to just saying, "No way, it's ugly, I don't want it." Just a nice bunch of people that I didn't mind having in my home, as opposed to some other contractors who've been here, who I wouldn't like turn my back on them, but these guys were, I considered them family rather early on in the install. At the show, SAIL did a quick Google Maps search for my property, looked at the exposure and said, "This looks possible. You have a big roof area," and the preliminary was done there, so as not to waste his time or my time. I mean, if I was pointed completely in the wrong direction or buried behind trees, he would have said, "This is probably not a good deal for you." We set up an appointment. He came over. He was here for about an hour or 2 hours. He had some sample equipment, which I had also seen at the show. But he went up on the roof, conducted a site survey. He has all his fancy compasses and light meters, and he thought about it for a while. Within a week, he came back and he gave us a preliminary proposal as to what could be done and the approximate costs, pros and cons, etc. So the site survey was the decisive point. SAIL recommended a system which was adequate for our needs, which would meet 100% of our needs, but I was thinking more in growth, that I'd be adding stuff, the extra air conditioning units and things in the future. I didn't want to be out of power again. So we upsized ourselves. We went to the largest unit we could get a rebate on. And with his proposal, we went through the financials and saw that the payback was reasonable, and then we decided to proceed. SAIL, as part of his service, it was from soup to nuts, getting the permitting, the surveys from the structural engineer to make sure that the roof was able to support the loads, dealing with the local village. Wasn't the easiest thing in the world for permitting, so he was on top of that at all times. We were able to get the permits in place, and then getting a certificate of occupancy for that. Again, he took care of it, and I never had to call the village or do anything of that sort. Just provided the paperwork necessary. Really, it was was rather quick. They came on a Monday morning. I believe it was like I wanted to get it done over the 4th of July week. I was off that week. They came Monday morning. He had a crew of about 8 to 12 people. It was a big crew. And again, he said he went full bore on that because he knew of my time constraints. I wanted to get this done as quickly as possible. And we started Monday morning, and I was generating power by Tuesday afternoon. 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, my meter was spinning backwards. The weather is sometimes out of his control. If it was raining, or this time of year, if it was snowing, obviously that would crimp his installation. But we had good weather, and I said, a little under 2 days, and we were making power. I appreciated working with him, and I considered it working with him, even though, I mean, he did the work. But it was a pleasure. I mean, he answered all my questions. I was here for the entire install because I wanted to. I'm a techie at heart, so I was able to witness everything going in. He wasn't condescending. He answered all my questions. I remember Rory as part of the installation crew. I remember Greg specifically, and I said there was about 8 to 10 others, which unfortunately I don't remember by name because I never got a chance really to get that close because they were in and out pretty quickly. Again, there really wasn't as much. I've had more interactions for smaller projects, much more time consuming than this was. They would have, done my install within a couple of days of having signed on the bottom line if possible, but there was need for permitting, and that took a significant amount of time. But dealing with them, it was rather straightforward. There wasn't much. I've spent more time with contractors on much smaller projects than this one. This wasn't a trivial install, yet it went very quickly, and the amount of back and forth necessary was minimal. I'm not as concerned when the bill comes in because it's minimal to non-existent. We're basically paying $6 a month to LIPA for meter rental. I'm generating more. I'm a net producer. I'm generating more power than I'm consuming. I have a huge bank of power going into the winter, which carried me through the winter and then some. I'm running electric heaters to augment my natural gas heating, simply because I've got the power and I've got the power to spare. And I'm not as concerned about running the air conditioning. I'm more than self-sufficient, and I'm not guilty about using power because I'm making it, and it's clean power, and it takes a lot of the guilt away from it. We had sun power panels and inverters installed. The sun power panels are the 225 black version, which because of our street, that they're facing the street appeal was very important. We have a darkish roof. The panels are black, so they blended in very, very nicely. It's split into three zone solar. I have 3 inverters. They're all identical. They're 4 kilowatt units. The total system size is 10 kilowatts, which is generating more than our needs. When it's not covered by snow, it works very well, especially during the peak energy generation months in the summer, spring to fall. In the winter, not so much, but I'm still able to cover most of my consumption in the winter. And then I banked it in the summer when I'm overproducing. I carry sales business cards in my wallet at all times. So does my wife Allison. We have given them out, and one of them did generate a sale to a neighbor of ours. They were also very happy with the install. Theirs took longer because it was raining, and it's a 2-story structure as opposed to our having a ranch. So safety was a little bit more of a concern there. They didn't want anybody falling off the roof for obvious reasons. But yes, wholeheartedly recommend. Whenever anyone looks at our system or asks questions, I sometimes drop the fact that we have solar at parties, and everybody is like, "Oh, really? How does that work? Are you happy with it?" And I whip out the business cards, and I said I'm happy to I speak very highly of Sale, and I'm happy to recommend his services at all, whenever the opportunity presents itself. It's no longer on the bleeding edge of technology. I mean, it's pretty common stuff now. You're not really a pioneer anymore. Several years ago, yes, every system was non-standard. The components were manufactured typically in someone's basement or garage. The panels were homegrown. These are all components from major, Fortune 500 manufacturers. The warranties are there. They're very long. They're backed by major companies. You don't really have no qualms from the equipment. The important part is to find an installer who will be there. I've heard of orphan systems in the past where somebody sets up shop, the incentives expire, and they close up shop and they're gone. And now it's an orphan system, and if something does happen, no one really wants to service you because they don't know what they're getting themselves involved in. But the technology works. It's proven. It's tried and true. And if the installation is done correctly, it'll last a very, very long time. It's still rather expensive. It was palatable because of all the incentives, the rebates, etc. They're cutting back on those, but the price of the equipment, I believe, is going down more or less at the same rate as the rebates are being eliminated. So the net out of pocket is probably the same for someone who's considering it today versus 2 years ago when we pulled the trigger. It's definitely something that should be considered, especially if you're going to be in your home for a while. And well, I guess technically, even if you're not, if I was in the market for a home and I have two homes side by side, one with solar that's working and one that isn't solar, I would be willing to pay more for the home with solar, especially if they show you their bills and they say, look, that's an extra $200 a month that you can put towards other things, as opposed to paying LIPA. The energy crisis, it is there, even though we don't talk about it because we're still on the hook with Mideast oil. This was a good way of trying to wean ourselves off of it. I'm not a super environmentalist or anything like that. I looked at the financials and they made sense. We spend money on a lot of stupid things which don't have a return on investment. People think nothing of putting $10,000 into a home entertainment system, and 2 years later it's garbage. At least this way, if you're putting the money into this, it's paying you back, month after month for about 25 years before you have to start considering replacement. So this is when we had gotten we paid for this with a home equity line of credit, a HELOC loan, to tide us over until all the rebates came in. And when I told our banker what we were getting the loan for, he was amazed and said, wow, most people get a loan like this to go on vacation or to put in a pool. This makes sense because you will be getting your money back on this in a very short amount of time. So he was surprised at what we were going to do with the money, and he was impressed. It's more or less probably the most maintenance-free item that you're going to have in your home. There's no pumps, no compressors, really nothing to wear out, no moving parts. I just look at how much energy I'm producing. You become very cognizant of that. And walk by, I tap the panel. There's a little control panel in our hallway, and I can see in real time how much energy we're producing at any one time. There are internet apps. I monitor it on my iPhone when I'm away from the house. I see exactly how much power we're generating, and I smile. But there's really no maintenance issues to speak of. The wiring is all encased in metal conduit. It's all protected. Nothing to do but reap the savings.